Hello, this is Miles Parscale, and for ECED 536, I am doing my discussion 2 post on Western European influence on early U.S. education. So I decided to choose the early Western European influencers, specifically 4 of them, and this is the video that will be accompanying my slideshow. So when I say flip slide, please flip it, okay? Flip slide to slide 2. My first one is John Locke. Quote, he countered the religious argument that children are born with predetermined sinful nature, which was the way that people thought at the time. Quote, instead he believed that children are born as tabula rasa, which is Latin for blank slates. What gets written on the slates is determined by the experiences in their environment. Locke was accurate in assuming that the environmental experiences play a major role in children's learning. This is shown in the red line right here that says modern teaching method of teaching a person who is a blank slate, teaching to a person. Quote, many schools still operate on the notion that children are empty vessels and need to be filled rather than active participants in the process of education. So they're really, John Locke is laying part of the groundwork for what we're learning here. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is the next one I decided to write about. Quote, introduce the romantic image of the child as innocent. He provided the idea that the children are born good rather than evil, and that they have inherent abilities which to build upon. And this is, end quote, this is shown in the modern educational methods of observations to students about how to teach them more effectively, how we use our observational methods, especially in the early childhood education. Early childhood education has a strong tradition of focusing on the positive in children to develop individual potential, end quote. Rousseau's belief in inherent goodness and potential of children had a strong impact on the educational ideas and practices that followed. So him and John Locke really lay a lot of the groundwork that others will build off of, scaffold, if you will. The next one I wrote about was Johann Pestalozzi. He believed that, quote, he believed that all children could benefit from education, whether they were rich or poor. He believed that all teachers must study child development, and he thought that the learning proceeds through the stages and that the stages cannot be skipped or sped up. He promoted to be what could be called the whole child point of view, learning about that children's physical, emotional, social, moral, and intellectual development should be integrated, end quote, so that they should be integrated in all of the forms of learning so that we study all of those and understand them more fully. He called these the, quote, the hand, heart, and head. This is shown in the modern educational method of focusing on all parts of the child for learning. For example, when we do our observations, all of the different indicators and elements that you look at are all based on these very foundational methods from our Western European foundational educators. And the final one I wrote about was John Amos Comenius, who was a Swiss minister who wrote about educational reform and directed at a school where he could put his ideas into practice. He believed in 3 key ideas. First of all, teaching methods needed to be radically changed from punitive to approaches to make it easier and more pleasant, which made students want to be in school. Teachers should engage children with nature, like with their nature, and follow their lead in the education. And finally, and this was a big one at the time, children should learn in their own language rather than Latin. He wrote the first children's book, Orbis Pictus, or The World in Pictures, in Latin. This was the first children's picture book or illustrated textbook ever published in history. And this is shown in modern educational method of student-led learning, which, switch slide, education in the United States today, although our country tends to, quote, although our country tends to see children as innocents in need of protection by parents and the government, we also propel them into adult experiences at young ages. So we kind of toe the line on both of those, and these educational ideals are what were put into place hundreds of years ago now that we are still building off of as the foundation. Quote, our schools swing back and forth between taking an approach that children are empty vessels, tabula rasa, and viewing them as competent contributors to their own learning. So more the Rousseau thinking of method. All of the methods are valid and important, and this is shown because all of our modern teaching methods are based on the foundations that these people were discovering then. That education should be accessible for children, it should be student-led, that children are either blank slates or that they're competent contributors to their own learning, and that educators should really focus on the observational methods. Thank you for listening to my presentation.